How's it going? In today's training, we're going to go through how we've generated millions of dollars for premium fashion brands and how you can do the same with this meta account structure. So let's get started. Now, just to show you some results here, this is just looking at the last 2 years or so, around 4 million spent and about 23 attributed across Google Meta. Google loves to steal credit for other channels' work, so we do know that Meta is a lot more incremental here, but nonetheless another 9 or so million on Meta. So this stuff really does work. Let's jump through this system here. Now this of course has changed over the last 2 years. We've iterated on this, algorithms have changed, things have happened, but this is what's been working right now, and in the last year we've generated millions off this alone. So let's go through this. Now, there's a few different ways to structure your account, and of course this does depend on, number one, how many SKUs you're selling. It also depends on your business objective and where you are in your account currently. Are you starting a new account and just testing, or are you scaling an account that's already at 6-7 figures? This particular build out is really good for brands who have some traction, who are spending $10,000 to $50,000 a month and are really looking to scale to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Or just scale spend in general. This isn't for brands that are just starting and need to know a efficient testing structure. I'll touch on that at the end, but this also will work for brands that are spending $1 million a month. So let's go through this. Now, you'll notice we have a few different things going on. We have things distilled into collections and into categories, okay? Now, the biggest struggle and pain point for a lot of fashion brands is managing seasonality, inventory levels, projecting spend in relation to inventory, in relation to seasonal trends. It's a lot to manage. And so a huge goal, no matter where you are in your journey, is to make sure we have control over the amount of sales we are getting and to have specific control at least on the category level, right? If our inventory tanks and we can't show these ads anymore and we're getting back ordered, or we need to reduce spend and increase efficiency because we can't wait, 10 days to get orders. It's going to be another 60 days, for example. This is kind of what we need to consider. So what we have here is an ABO setup. And here we're just going to say we're going to be selling 3 collections. Maybe we have in these collections a variety of SKUs, right? So most brands may have a seasonal capsule, so that could be one collectional drop. And then in that collection, we have different categories of products. So maybe we have tops, bottoms, and accessories as an example. So each category will have different SKUs, and each category generally has different COGS, right? If you have a category, for example, category 1's shirts or tops, those probably have similar costs and similar inventory levels. And category 2, if it's bottoms, those probably have similar costs and similar inventory levels. But for your brand, you need to distill this down into whatever makes sense. So if you are selling dresses and pants, and those two things have very different cost structures, very different demand levels, and very different inventory requirements, you should separate that down into its own category if those are in a collection. The goal here is to group products with like values, like demand, and like inventory as much as possible, right? And usually for us, that's like tops, bottoms, shoes, for example. So separate out into those filters. Again, that's gonna be cost, inventory levels, demand, and then generally like what the product is, right? So this ABO structure, when we do ABO, of course, the budget is determined at the ad set level. So each category we can set a particular budget for. And so what this does is it helps us optimize this collection on a per category level and even a per SKU level if you make your categories very niche, right? And so what we can do here is not only control our costs on a per category level, but if we have a particular efficiency target, let's say for shirts, we need to have a 2 ROAS to make our ideal profit. And for shoes, we need to get a 3 ROAS to have profit, or MER. It's the same thing essentially. Or for bottoms, you need a 7 ROAS. Whatever that looks like, you should be controlling each category on a per ROAS goal basis. You can also do a bid cap basis, but ROAS goal is more flexible because it's a ratio instead of a specific flat number. It's percent, right, in a way. A ROAS goal for each category, right? And that's why we want to group products with similar costs and things so we can have similar efficiency targets for each of those, right? Because Different categories are going to have different costs. You're going to have different ROAS or profitability targets based on those costs for each product and existing inventory levels. And so you want control over efficiency targets for each category. And you also want control over budget for each category. And this enables you to have a better grasp on what's going on. So for example, if category 1 is tops and those sell out or are close to selling out, we should increase our ROAS goal, our efficiency target. Instead of asking for a 2x return, we should say, I only want sales if it's a 5x return or a 10x return, because we are nearing empty on our current inventory. So we shouldn't be trying to sell that at our normal efficiency standard. So again, this helps you adjust that demand generation and helps you adjust for diminishing inventory levels or changing seasons. Again, for example, let's say category 2 has bottoms, pants, and dresses, and we're getting into the fall, and so dresses are becoming less desirable and less sold. Well, in this case, maybe on this category, we'll lower our overall ROAS goal so that those products can be sold at a lower efficiency, but so we can sell those before we get into the new season, right? So every category of like products, like values, like demand, all those different things needs their own custom ROAS goal, okay? And on an ABO setup, so you can control that spend and control that demand, all right? And this will enable you to adjust for all the seasonal trending factors that will affect the business as well as inventory, okay? Now this is true for everything, right? So for each collection, this ABO ROAS goal setup per category of like products is how we would set this up, okay? Now in terms of creative assets, how do we set up our creative for each of these? Typically, we like to follow the ratio in fashion, specifically for apparel and accessories on the higher end niche. So I'm talking more about premium brands here, but we like to keep a 3-to-1 static to video ratio. So for every one video we create, we want to have 3 statics. This is just what we've seen work best for our brands. There's a few reasons. We find cheaper costs on statics, so CPMs and the cost of the audience is cheaper while the quality is still higher. We just see in general that statics perform better for whatever reason. It's more magazine-like, it's more shoppable, whatever it may be, they just perform better. Videos do well for some specific products. You can see how products look in different lighting. You can see how fabrics flow. There's some advantages to it, but in general, we're sticking mostly to statics. And I do include kind of animation style graphics in statics or GIF style within statics as well. And when we're doing these statics, the success of a fashion brand is simply determined by, I see it, I like it, right? It doesn't really matter what the font in the ad looks like or exactly how things are portrayed. If someone likes the piece and they can see themselves wearing that thing, it is going to sell. And that's pretty much all that matters in your creative. Are you putting your piece in the best light possible? Are you making people want to buy it? And is it literally just something people want to buy? There's not much you can do here. We've tested the text overlays and the hard headlines and all the different things. But at the end of the day, the thing is either in demand or it isn't. It's that straightforward, okay? Obviously, there's more technical pieces that might solve a problem. So there's more education that needs to happen on the ad for those. Maybe you have some specific zippers, or maybe you have some special fabric, and you might want to talk about that more. But at the end of the day, even if it's a cool piece of fabric or a cool zipper or an innovative recycled fabric, if it's not in style, and if the general piece, if the general silhouette or accessory isn't interesting or in demand, it's still not going to do well. So that's really all that matters at the end of the day. All right. And then we also have carousels. So for every category, we want to have carousels. Now, the number of carousels will depend, of course, on the number of products and how you actually are categorizing things. So again, if we're simply doing tops, bottoms, and shoes, as I explained earlier, for example, we could have all our tops in one carousel. We could simply make a product collection on Shopify and have a specific category being fed to Meta that is simply only tops. Okay, and then same things for bottoms. We're gonna have our own specific catalog and feed for bottoms, and so we're only gonna show bottoms on that carousel. And this carousel can also be like a DPA setup, or you could just have it as a simple product on white setup. Now, again, for an example, if you want to separate dresses and pants into their own feeds because maybe they have very different costs, very different types of buyers, which may be the case, then of course you can separate those out into their own different kinds of carousels. But for each general category, if you're selling hats or you're selling a variety of shirts or tops or dresses, each of those should have their own carousel and their own catalog essentially being shown to people. Catalogs typically are one of the top performing assets for fashion. It's usually the second or third ad someone sees, and it just reminds people that they should buy that, and it just shows the product plainly and ultimately gets a lot of the conversion value. So a carousel per category, depending on how niche you go with it, is the best practice, okay? Now, a lot of people right now are saying, what about DPA ads? What about dynamically shown ads where we just put a bunch of assets in and let Meta kind of figure out which ones to show to people? I think DPA ads should be treated in the same way that catalog should be treated, where if you want to do DPA ads on a per category basis, you can upload all of those into one set per category and control it the same way you would a catalog. I think they're really good in general, but for scaling fashion brands, we pretty much focus more on just pure catalogs or pure single assets. But when testing, DPA can be a super efficient structural testing mechanism, which is what I recommend for brand new brands. If you're coming out the gate, run purely a DPA ad with a ROAS goal on a similar category collection basis like this, and don't run any single assets. But if you're a scaling brand, you're already spending quite a bit a month, I wouldn't worry as much about DPA and would spend more on the singles and on the catalog basis. Okay, so this is the general structure. And the great thing about this structure, it's super friendly to scale. It gives you control on a per category or per SKU collection basis. You can change the efficiency target at will, depending on inventories, seasonal demand, etc. And of course, you can change that budget to also control the demand for your products. All right, now let's go into creative development. I'm not going to get super into detail here, but as I mentioned before, fashion brands in general are mostly predicated upon the fact that someone sees the thing, an image, and they like it. There's not much more going on than that. So with all these different ads, it's really more about how in trend your piece is, how much people actually want your piece today, how seasonal it is, all these different things. But in general, the best way to figure out what ads are performing is typically going to use a tool like Atria, and this is probably the best value tool for this. And of course, with this, you can go and look up different pieces, tops, bottoms, dresses, whatever it is, and you can find those and see what ads are performing, sort by longest running to get some of the best performers, sort by industry, sort by platform or video length. This also has TikTok on here, sort by theme, so you can kind of get a specific video structure. And even what you can do as well is, once you find a brand you like, you can find their ratio video to image. You can figure out their top landing pages and a bunch of other things. So if you need help figuring out which ads you should be running, check out a tool like Atria. This is the best one we found, and this is what we use in order to get inspiration for ads. But again, in general, it's all about just how in demand and how much people actually want the piece. Because if it's really in demand, I promise it will sell. You could put an in-demand fashion piece on a white background and it will sell. That's all there is to it. There's ways to make it look better with lifestyle and high production content, this and that, but it's going to just very much depend on your brand. And so I can't offer a lot of generic advice for that, but I'm giving you the tools to figure out what you should be doing here. Okay. Now, Atria also has another great tool, and what it does is it will actually take your assets and it will break them out into performance in a more understandable way than you can see in Meta. And this is also what I would recommend. As you can see different assets performance over time. You can sort by minimum or maximum spend levels or different metric thresholds. You can filter by launch time, and you can analyze a bunch of different metrics for all of your creative assets. So very useful if you want an easier way to analyze your creative rather than going through the ads manager, or more specifically when you're communicating with the creative team. All right. And you can also go into demographics, and there's some AI analysis here that kind of sorts your ad by topic or type. And so this is a great way to figure out, what kind of ads do well for your brand. And so, for example, if you see sporty elegance performing well, you should be producing more ads that communicate that angle. So definitely check out Atria. It's got a free trial, I think, not affiliated with them at all, but would just recommend it for getting some fashion ads performing for your brand. Okay, definitely try this out. All right, next is forecasting, and trying to forecast not only inventory, which is the bigger challenge, but also forecasting monthly budgets, where to allocate marketing spend, expectations around results, this and that. Here's what I'll say for this. The only way to actually scale an ad account to 8-7 figures is to have a daily forecast. That's the only way to do it. And a daily forecast just gives you an expectation around how much should be being spent each and every day on each platform, and what your expected profit, revenue, order numbers, AOV should be, everything across the board. And so this helps you figure out inventory, and it helps you figure out spend. And what this also does is it gives you the optimal amount of spend you should be spending each day to maximize profit or revenue depending on your goal. Okay, so here we've uploaded about 365 days of historical Google Ads data and historical Meta Ads data. I'll just go over to Meta Ads for congruency. And what this ultimately does is it helps you optimize for 3 goals: revenue, new customer revenue, contribution margin, so net profit, profit before variable or profit after variable costs, and 90-day contribution margin. So basically looking at net profit with a little bit of an LTV tail. Okay. And really what it shows is, depending on your objective, if it's revenue or profit or whatever it may be, it will tell you the amount you should be spending each day in order to maximize that metric. So let's say you have a brand and you want to maximize new customer revenue, which is a pretty common metric to optimize for, then you should be spending $3,400 a month, right? And that will generate you about $114,000 in new customer revenue. But if you want to maximize profit, it's a little bit different, right? If we want to maximize profit, we're going to be spending closer to $1,800 a day, and that will generate us around $7,000 a month in net profit. So this is kind of how you can start to figure out how much you should be spending per day based off your historical data, and this will ultimately help you figure out, what you should be optimizing for based on your goals. Okay, so what we do with brands is we come in, we upload their data, we upload their cost data, and we figure out what the optimal daily spend level is across their 2 key channels, and then we say, hey, for this given month, this is your optimal spend level. Obviously, for every month, the optimal spend level will change depending on seasonality and a bunch of other factors, but that's what we do. Once we find our optimal spend level, say we want to maximize perhaps our new customer revenue, we can go ahead and plug that down in here. And then what this will do is it will spit out a forecast for that entire month, taking into account other variables that this does not, like day of the week and a few other things. And so now we actually have an entire forecast for September, each and every day, our expected spend, our ROAS, our expected new customer ROAS, CPA, revenue, AOV, orders, variable costs, and ultimately profit. And we can view this on a blended level, so looking at 2 channels combined, on a single level, or any way you want. And you can ultimately just track this over time and see where you're at for each period. So, when we're scaling premium fashion brands, this is the kind of secret nugget to finding success. Because if you don't have a plan, if you don't know how much you should be spending each day, if you don't have an expectation around revenue and profit for every single day, you'll never know when something goes wrong. You'll never know what's broken when revenue suddenly drops. You'll never be able to figure out actually what's happening in the business, because you don't have a standard and expectation for each and every day. And if things go off the rails, you can investigate, figure out what metric dropped, go ahead and fix it. If things maybe don't go off the rails, but your forecast is off, either under or over, then you can go in and say, hey, what's going on here? Maybe we need to do an extra offer this month. Maybe we can increase our efficiency target across the board. That's how you're going to run the business. And this is the new standard of running ad accounts in 2024 for premium fashion brands. Okay. So use this, the links below, and let me know if you have any questions. Make sure to start on the Start Here tab, and I'll walk you through everything there. We also have a very big update coming to this soon with live tracking and a whole updated forecasting model. It's going to be fantastic. All right, last thing here, creative planning, which is for the creative section. Now, this document goes over creative planning in general, but here's what I'll say. Make sure for your assets that you were just kind of thinking about how your creatives are communicating subliminal messages, right? There's a bunch of emotions that sell, and we focus on about 10 key emotions that are proven to sell. And tagging your products to one of these emotions and making sure that your creative kind of communicates this is a fantastic way to get more efficiency out of your results. So this is a great creative planning tool that can kind of walk you through a really strong methodology that's proven to develop really high performing assets. Also helps you kind of track creatives and do a few other things, but this is just a great way to kind of connect the media buying team and the creative team together to have a comprehensive plan around creative execution. All right, so I'll attach this below as well. Now that about wraps it up. If you have any questions, let me know. In general, this stuff isn't super complicated. It's not that hard. The hardest part, in my opinion, is actually finding products that sell and or developing those products that are actually in demand, especially evergreen products. That is the hardest part, because if you can do that right, all this is very easy. It's all about segregating things down as much as possible into categories, maintaining control over budget per category and efficiency targets per category, making sure you have a daily expectation, making sure you're looking at the market as a whole and analyzing those creatives, using tools to analyze your creatives and using AI to analyze what angles in your creatives perform, and then also planning those creatives out with something like the creative planning document, and of course checking in on that forecast after that's all said and done once again to see where you actualized for the period. Okay. All right. Good luck in Q4 out there. Again, any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day.